During the third act of this movie, I thought Willy Wonka versus Elvis Presley in a duel. The duel I never thought I would get, but I'm glad I got. Hey movie buffs, I'm Jack Benner, and welcome to my review of Dune Part 2. Dune Part 2 is the sequel to 2021's Dune, based on the beloved sci-fi novel by Frank Herbert. Denis Villeneuve is back behind the camera for Dune Part 2, and you got the returning players of Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Josh Brolin, Javier Bardem, Dave Bautista, as well as the new members of the cast such as Austin Butler, Florence Pugh, Léa Seydoux, and Christopher Walken. Set after the events of Part 1, where Paul Atreides, once again played by Timothée Chalamet, and Lady Jessica, played by Rebecca Ferguson, unite with the Fremen people to wage war against House Harkonnen and seek revenge. I absolutely loved Dune Part 1. It was my favorite film of 2021. From the pitch-perfect cast ensemble, stunning visuals, and Denis Villeneuve did an absolutely amazing job setting up the story and creating an immersive experience. I know not everyone loved the first Dune and found it to be just a setup story and it was incomplete. However, I thought it was a fantastic and engaging setup that definitely made me wanting more. And I just knew Denis Villeneuve has something special in store with a Part 2 that could be potentially amazing. And at the 2022 Oscars, it won 6, deserved all of them. Although I would have loved to see it win Best Picture, I am still pissed that Denis Villeneuve got snubbed for Best Director. What the hell? Did the Academy just seriously watch Dune Part 1 and thought AI or a robot made that movie? Seriously, just everything visually and the storytelling that Denis accomplished with that movie, and the Academy just didn't reward him a Best Director nomination? That to me is one of the biggest Best Director snubs since Christopher Nolan for The Dark Knight and Inception. Right when the credits rolled of Dune Part 1, I immediately said, just give me Part 2 right now, please. Regardless of how long I have to wait, I will be there. And luckily, a few days after Part 1 came out, Dune Part 2 was immediately greenlit. And thankfully, despite being in both theaters and HBO Max day-to-day release, it was the most successful Warner Brothers release of 2021, which was great to see. And it was scheduled for a 2023 release, which I was very excited. But then the SAG-AFTRA strike unfortunately happened. And if you remember the rules, and in fact there was going to be a part of the strike, they weren't allowed to promote an upcoming movie while on strike, which I do understand. And Warner Brothers wouldn't have the cast available to promote the movie, and when they're not on strike, and at that time it would hopefully be over. And Warner Brothers decided to delay the film from November 2023 to March 2024, which really disappointed me. And you know what the sad thing is about the film's delay? The day when it was announced that the film was delayed to this year, it was delayed the day before my birthday. Now that right there is the worst birthday present ever. It's unfortunate that both release dates of the Dune films have been affected by both the global pandemic, which led to day-to-day releases on Max, and now the SAG-AFTRA strike, which I do feel bad for Denis Villeneuve with his passion projects that these things happened. And there was a little part of me that felt like Warner Brothers kind of made the right choice to delay the film, wait for the strike to be over and a deal is made to have the cast available to promote it, and just have that star power of the cast ensemble to get people excited. And about the original release date, it would have came out the week before SAG-AFTRA was in final negotiations to make a deal. And to be honest, that November was just a lackluster month for movies. Despite that Hunger Games prequel actually doing well at the box office, and I thought that was decent, The Marvels, Wish, and Napoleon were all box office bombs. But regardless, this was my most anticipated film of 2024, and close to it would be Nosferatu from Robert Eggers, Furiosa, and Joker Folie à Deux. Not only because I loved Part 1, because Part 2 was said to be even bigger and better than Part 1. It was going to be more action-packed and a more satisfying story. And when the first trailer was released, it definitely seemed to indicate all that it was promised. And that second trailer was one of the best and epic trailers I have seen in a long time. Just every time I saw that trailer, I immediately get pumped. And the early reviews were raving that it's even better than the first movie and that it's an epic spectacle and gave you everything you wanted after Part 1. I have said this before, but whenever I hear a film has been receiving a considerable amount of hype, I like to reserve my level of excitement just a bit, knowing it could be either overhyped, disappointing, or probably an inferior sequel. And there was another small part of me that was wondering, could this sequel truly live up to that hype? Having seen Dune Part 2, opening night, and here to give you my review, all I can say is this: there was not a single ounce of disappointment that I felt exiting the theater. Because Dune Part 2 not only lived up to my anticipation, but it surpasses it on so many levels. Words cannot describe just how awe-inspiring and incredible of an experience Dune Part 2 truly is. And I was in complete awe when the credits rolled that I didn't even want to get up from my seat. Not only a phenomenal sci-fi blockbuster sequel, but everything a phenomenal film should be first and foremost. Let's start this review with the pros. Right out of the way, let's talk about this film visually. What do I even need to say? Actually, let me do something for a moment. Let's pretend this trophy right here is the Oscar for Best Visual Effects. Just take it. I don't care if we're 3 months into the new year. This film already locked for the Oscar visual effects. It won. Here you go. Take it. And we have a year to wait for the 2025 Oscars. And don't even tell me what's coming out for the rest of the year. I am excited for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. That looks great. The effects look terrific. But I just don't see that film winning over Dune Part 2 for visual effects. And besides, Blade Runner 2049 beat War for the Planet of the Apes for the Oscar for visual effects. So it's likely going to happen here that Denis Villeneuve will beat a Planet of the Apes movie. And for the visual effects, it's all marvelous. On so many levels, it is so grand, stunning to admire, and detailed. From the sandworms, world building, and locations, all of it is a flawless technical achievement, along with the terrific production design and costume design and the amazing sound design. And it's all just so precise and thorough. On top of all that, another thing to praise here, Greg Fraser's cinematography. Incredible. These Dune films and The Batman are proof why he is one of the best cinematographers working today. From the jaw-dropping use of wide shots, appropriate use of close-ups when necessary and doesn't overuse them. And there are so many shots in this movie that I want either framed and just a screenshot of it on my phone. And I'm just constantly thinking about after I've seen the movie. And that also includes unique color aesthetics. There is an action scene early in the film with Lady Jessica and Paul Atreides with the Fremen, and that is shot beautifully with this orange color aesthetic. And what you've seen in the trailer, and it looks beautifully in the film, is when Fade Rotha is in this gladiator-like battle, and it's shot beautifully in black and white, and it does an interesting choice with them being under a dark sun. And I was like, okay, now I understand the reason for this being in black and white. And if this gets snubbed for an Oscar nomination for Best Cinematography, I will be livid because this film looked freaking gorgeous. And Denis Villeneuve is quickly joining among the ranks as one of the best filmmakers working today. Not only his unparalleled craftsmanship on a technical level, but for telling a more engrossing story to focus on story and characters. Everything on how to successfully continue a story is present in Dune Part 2. Every important character is so well realized and rounded, from the heroes and villains with their conflicts and motivations. How the sequels take these characters in interesting directions made for a more engaging watch. And I also loved in Part 2 that we got to know the Fremen more, how their culture is, their rituals, and seeing both different sides of, is Paul Atreides the chosen one and do they believe in him or not? It's very apparent how passionate Denis Villeneuve is about the story and lore and mythology, and wanting to expand upon things and be faithful to the story of Dune. From his craftsmanship to visual presentation, scope, and storytelling, he just knocked it out of the park on so many levels. However, it never feels like spectacle over substance. Villeneuve always focuses on story and characters first, action second. While he does remember to make it an immersive experience like Part 1, he mostly tells an emotionally investing and satisfying story this time. And he's not afraid to take the story in darker directions and throw in some surprises here and there. Over the years, it's incredibly fulfilling to see Denis Villeneuve evolve as a filmmaker with his unique vision, craft, and range. Seeing him do riveting crime films like Prisoners and Sicario, and doing experimental films like Enemy, and now I think he's the best sci-fi director working today. Evident with films like Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and the Dune films, this guy is just a masterful filmmaker I can't praise enough. Dune Part 1 had a pitch-perfect cast, and Dune Part 2 is no exception. Top to bottom, an excellent cast ensemble without a single weak link. Ever since 2017 or 2018, when I first took notice of Timothée Chalamet, he has been demonstrating why he is a talented young actor. And not only that, proving why he is a movie star. And I've always loved seeing his range over the years, and dramas that he's been great in his Oscar-nominated performance in Call Me By Your Name and Little Women. And it was interesting to see him months ago, seeing his more whimsical side and showing off his musical chops in Wonka. And here in Dune Part 2, I think he gives his best work so far. He goes darker and more conflicted with Paul's character transformation. He absolutely gives it his all from the physicality and emotion Paul goes through in Dune Part 2. And there is one particular scene in the film, all I can say is Chalamet just commands that scene. And for those who are underwhelmed with Zendaya's brief screen time here and there in Dune Part 1 and wanted more of her character, Dune Part 2 will certainly make up for that, and it's worth the wait. She's terrific in a more significant role with her great chemistry with Chalamet. She's badass and gives a more stronger performance with her character motives and action-wise. And I love seeing their romance evolve and seeing their conversations at first and Chani training Paul to be the best and see if he's really the chosen one, and how it goes from a sweet romance to tragedy later. And she's more than just the love interest for this movie, and taking things with the romance I honestly didn't expect. Rebecca Ferguson is once again amazing as Lady Jessica, going in very interesting directions with her character. She's more fierce and just as captivating as she was in Part 1. Josh Brolin is again terrific. Dave Bautista is even more brutal than he was in Part 1. And Stellan Skarsgård is just as sinister as the Baron. And a returning actor who is excellent here, Javier Bardem as Stilgar. Like Zendaya, it was great to see him get a more prominent role, and it was also a welcome addition of humor with his character that never felt distracting once. And now for the new actors in the film, Florence Pugh is great in her little screen time here and there. Léa Seydoux and Christopher Walken are all really good as well. But the actor who just straight up steals the show here, Austin Butler as Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen. Now, I was really excited for this casting choice, and I didn't love Elvis as a movie. I liked it, but he was the best part of the movie, and that received him an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. He was close to winning, but I think Brendan Fraser deserved it. I digress. And something I love is unexpected choices for actors to play sinister antagonists. And if they knock it out of the park, that's where I really love it. And that is exactly what Austin Butler did here. He is incredible in this movie. And just from the first scene that set up everything about this character, just, oh my God, wow. He made it his own by being ruthless, sinister, charismatic, menacing, unrecognizable, to the point you really couldn't tell it's Austin Butler and forgot, oh yeah, he played Elvis. And unpredictability he brought in every scene. And this was such a great opportunity to see more of his range as an actor, playing a darker, vicious, and ruthless character. And I love the voice that they went for him, and luckily he didn't do the Elvis voice again. And it was appropriate for this voice to fit in line with the Harkonnen heritage. And now that this film was said to be more of an action-packed sequel, do the action scenes deliver? Answer, hell yeah, they do. They are all intense, thrilling, and absolutely exhilarating. And this is one of the most incredible action spectacles I've seen in years. They're all shot beautifully, they're also tension-filled and visceral, and they also do what they should do. Make sure you're invested in the story and characters first before the action scenes. And as for the standouts of some of my favorite action scenes in the film, I already mentioned the black and white scene with Feyd-Rautha in that gladiator fight. That was incredible to see. And the sequence where Paul Atreides is riding a sandworm for the first time. My jaw was on the floor just from the sound design, the camera movements. And there's even a great shot as soon as the sandworm is approaching from the dunes, and it just pans from right to left following Paul Atreides. And finally, in the climax, the duel between Paul Atreides and Feyd-Rautha. What an intense fight that was. It was both brutal and visceral, and it was a brilliant choice not to have music during that fight scene. And speaking of music, Hans Zimmer's score here, he outdid himself. It is epic and powerful, one of his best in years. There are many fantastic new themes in Dune Part 2 that I keep listening to after I've seen the movie. It adds so much power and tension to everything. I loved it. Now, this film is 2 hours and 45 minutes long. It is just a few minutes longer than Blade Runner 2049, now being Denis Villeneuve's longest film to date. And that runtime is justified here. There wasn't a single second in this movie that feels unnecessary or wasted. And it just flies by to where I'm like, this movie is 2 hours and 45 minutes. I didn't really feel it. Taking its precise time for story, characters, action, and engagement. As for any issues with this movie, nope. I don't have one issue with this movie. Actually, maybe one, and that would be the ending of the film, and it wasn't anything I disliked, but when it ended, I immediately said, just Part 3. When's it coming out? I want more. To sum up, Dune Part 2 delivers on everything it promised by being bigger and better than Part 1 and then some. From the far more engrossing continuation from the characters and story, being an exceptional technical achievement and excellent cast ensemble. I would highly recommend this movie to you. If you love Dune Part 1 like I did, definitely go see this movie. Or if you're fans of the novel, definitely go see it. Or if you're looking for an amazing sci-fi film, you certainly got it. Or if you haven't seen Dune Part 1, if you're interested in checking out Dune Part 2, definitely watch Part 1 before you watch Part 2. Or if you were a little underwhelmed with Part 1 and you wanted something more from the story, I think you should give Dune Part 2 a chance, and maybe it will give you what you were expecting from Part 1. I am so excited to see this movie again next week if I have the time. And definitely go see Dune Part 2 on the biggest screen with the best sound system possible, because this movie is absolutely worth seeing on the biggest screen. And now to grade it, I'm going to give Dune Part 2, but bam, 5 out of 5 stars and A+. This is definitely what I needed for the first half of 2024, and hopefully there will be many more good movies for this year. And what could give its competition for my favorite film of 2024? We shall wait and see. And I've been hearing Denis Villeneuve is planning to do Dune Part 3 or Dune Messiah, and if it is greenlit, I will be there, regardless of how long I have to wait. And Denis Villeneuve, he said he will take his time for Dune Part 3. Let him take his time to make something amazing. And to quote Toy Story 2, you can't rush art. And with this Dune duology so far, he is proving to be the perfect director to adapt Dune. And I'm hearing this film did a great job with its opening night previews. And this film is going to have quite an opening weekend, making way more than Part 1. I felt like the word of mouth helped, the strike being over with the cast being available to promote and do press, that helped. And the epic trailers to get people excited for a more action-packed sequel, that helped as well. So with the rave reviews and this movie about to be a box office hit, I say chances seem good that Part 3 will be greenlit. Now, do I have any Oscar hopes regardless if we're 3 months into the new year? Could this get in for Best Picture, and could Denis Villeneuve get in for Best Director after being snubbed for the first film? I'd say if that hype stays strong throughout the rest of the year, and if it doesn't really face that much competition, I think it should get in for a Best Picture nomination. The rave reviews are there, it getting in locks for technical categories, that can help too for a Best Picture nomination. So we'll see how things go for consideration at the 2025 Oscars. And I'm not really one of those people who say, well, it came out earlier in the year, it doesn't really have much of a shot. I don't really believe that. The Grand Budapest Hotel came out in spring, and that movie received the most nominations that year, I remember. And I believe it was third place to win that it won the Golden Globe for Best Comedy over the Best Picture winner Birdman. Get Out and Black Panther were Best Picture nominees, and those movies came out in February. We've also had big blockbuster sequels that came out in May, like Mad Max Fury Road and Top Gun Maverick, both Best Picture nominees. And even recently, Everything Everywhere All at Once, that came out in spring, and that movie won Best Picture and won 7 Oscars total. So I don't really believe a factor of it came out earlier in the year, as long as that hype still stays strong throughout the year. So I hope chances seem good that it will get in for Best Picture nomination, or Denis getting in for Best Director. I don't know about any acting nominations or adapted screenplay. We'll have to wait and see on that. But I definitely think it's locked for technical categories. Visual effects already has it in the bag. Score, sound, cinematography, sets, costumes, editing. It's got it all there for the technical categories that could boost it for a Best Picture nomination, so curious to see how this movie does next year at the 2025 Oscars. So I'd like to hear from you guys. What do you guys think of Dune Part 2 if you've seen it? Do you agree? Disagree with my review? Or if you haven't seen it, are you excited to see the film or not? Let me know down below. Did you enjoy hearing my thoughts on this movie and want to see more reviews like this in the future? If yes, please hit that like and subscribe button if you're new here, and don't forget that notification bell for my next upload in the future. It really means a lot. And until the next video, I'm Jack Benner, and look forward to another movie review.